Hello there.
Hey Allison, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Now we gotta check with these Bluetooth headphones.
Oh, okay.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. I just made my way down to the city. Arrived about um, almost an hour ago. So I fly to Nashville tomorrow actually.
Oh, hey.
Just going up for because you're in Tennessee, right? I
I
didn't even
am,
think of
yeah.
that actually. Yeah, there's a wedding going on. So it's a yoga friend of mine. So it's gonna be a big like bhakti wedding ceremony. So I'm
In
excited to check it out.
Nashville. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. It's like a party city. I was really surprised that when I went to visit, there were like in broad daylight, just buses full of people partying, drinking, going wild. Like, it's like, what is this place?
Oh my God, yeah. It's funny. I keep telling people I'm going to Nashville, and they're like, "That's so cool." And I'm like, I don't think I'm probably going to do any of the typical Nashville things necessarily, but I'm excited to check it out. Yeah, this yoga center just opened about a year ago. My friends opened a Bhakti yoga center down there called
Nice.
Yoga Soul. So that's actually where the wedding is taking place too.
Cool. Yeah, I hope you enjoy Nashville. I can't say it was my scene, but I'm sure going to a wedding there would be way more fun than whatever I was doing. I think I was
Nice.
sightseeing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I've got some like work from home, next level work from home goals right now. This is
The
I
dog.
guess
Oh, what is
some
this?
yeah, it's like they're these like leg stockings that are filling up with air, so they're like compressing my legs, and then the
Oh,
air is like slowly letting out. Basically, my boyfriend's roommate works for this like health company, and they sent him home with this recently, so I'm like trying trying it out. It's not too loud, is it? Can you hear it?
I mean like a little bit in the background, but it's not like overwhelming.
Okay, as long as it's not distracting. Cool.
Wait, I think I know someone who needs that. What was that called? Therabody?
Therabody, yeah.
Like, okay, I'm
It's
gonna pull
it's
that up
so
so
good because
look it up.
I actually worked out my legs today, so it's like appropriate to have it on here.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I think I don't see anyone messaging in the WhatsApp group, so I guess we're already recording, so I'll go ahead and dive in. And you're welcome to read a little too. We could flip
Sure.
flop. But what I'd love to do is get all the way to book two. I know you've already read the whole thing, but there's not that much longer before then. We're getting back into the short chapters. It seems like the last two chapters we read were long chapters, and now we're diving back into some of the shorter chapters.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and dive in. For anybody listening, welcome. And just make sure I'm at the right spot. Yes, this very intense essay on resistance and fundamentalism that hit us hard last week. Go back
Yes.
and visit that if you need to. So now we're diving in this week with resistance and criticism. If you find yourself criticizing other people, you're probably doing it out of resistance. When we see others beginning to live their authentic selves, it drives us crazy if we have not lived out our own. Individuals who are realized in their own lives almost never criticize others. If they speak at all, it is to offer encouragement. Watch yourself. Of all the manifestations of resistance, most only harm ourselves. Criticism and cruelty harm others as well. So I've
Mm.
shared, I think, at least multiple times now as we're reading this, the one thing one of my coaches always says is that when we feel envious of the accomplishments of another person, we are really just being confronted with our own unmet potential. And this is definitely something that I've experienced. I still experience it to this day. And I have another teacher who just kind of has as a pillar for living a proper life is that you don't criticize. And I think it's sort of like you have to understand too that even though we have this guideline to live by, that like I don't criticize, criticism might still rise up within us. That's okay. Maybe we can just clock it before we end up projecting it onto somebody else, or yeah, like even expressing it. And maybe one last thing I'll say on this is it's very easy to criticize someone behind their back too. Almost more tempting to criticize someone when they're not looking at us or around us, to do it behind their back than to do it directly to their face. I think broadly speaking, we kind of want to avoid criticism in general, but it can be a very good reflection point for us to just understand like something that we might be going through as we're experiencing some of that.
For
That's really
sure. I've definitely noticed that as I become more self-empowered and I know that I'm capable of making the kind of art I want to make, I generally see the same things I used to see, other people being successful, other people accomplishing things, and I feel inspired by them rather than like upset or critical of them. So
yeah.
I can really see how criticism is just an automatic byproduct of not knowing your own power to realize your dreams.
Well said. Very well said. I love that. Cool. You want to take the next one?
Sure. Resistance and self-doubt. Self-doubt can be an ally. This is because it serves as an indicator of aspiration. It reflects love, love of something we dream of doing, and desire to do it. If you find yourself asking yourself and your friends, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Chances are you are. The counterfeit innovator is wildly self-confident. The real one is scared to death. Oh my God. Wait, I not.
It's such a helpful reframe around self-doubt because again, it's almost something that is inevitably going to come up in our process. And you hear so much coaching these days on like, get rid of self-doubt, you can't afford it. But really, it's like what he's saying here is you can't actually escape it. And that last sentence right there, the counterfeit innovator, wildly self-confident, and the real innovator is actually scared to death. So this can be thought of as a way, in a way, as a companion on our journey to what we're aspiring towards. It's not something you're going to be able to necessarily push out of the car. Maybe you don't want to let it into the driver's seat per se, but it's definitely probably going to come along for the ride.
Yeah, and that applies to so many things. Like, people who don't actually know much about a topic seem to be the most like they kind of act like know-it-alls sometimes. And it's like, actually,
Mm,
actually, you were the one who shouldn't be talking about this. So, no, that's actually such a great helpful reminder because it's saying that if you're doubting yourself, it's because some part of you wants to get better and wants to like actually be good at what you do, and that's the call to effort that we keep talking about.
100%. It comes up a lot in the spiritual community that I'm in that we actually maintain an attitude of humility and humbleness about ourselves. And humility, it's said that it's not thinking less of oneself, but it's thinking of oneself less. And I think that that actually kind of complements this idea of self-doubt quite well, that we try to remain humble, remain with a sense of humility, because when you're on the other side, it just becomes a little bit too brash, a little bit too certain, and we need to leave some room for the uncertainty where doubt can actually play a healthy role. So I love that. Love that. Let's keep on going here. All right, we got resistance and fear. Are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear is good, like self-doubt. Fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do. Okay, I got to make sure everybody in the group listens to this or reads this chapter. It's just so good. Um, Remember our rule of thumb. The more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. So say that again. The more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. Resistance is experienced as fear. The degree of fear equates to the strength of resistance. Therefore, the more fear we feel about a specific enterprise, the more certain we can be that that enterprise is important to us and to the growth of our soul. That's why we feel so much resistance. If it meant nothing to us, there'd be no more resistance. There'd be no resistance. Have you ever watched Inside the Actor's Studio? The host, James Lipton, invariably asks his guests, what factors make you decide to take a particular role? The actor always answers, because I'm afraid of it. The professional tackles the project that will make him stretch. He takes on the assignment that will bear him into uncharted waters, compel him to explore unconscious parts of himself. Is he scared? Hell yes. He's petrified. Conversely, the professional turns down roles that he's done before. He's not afraid of them anymore. Why waste his time? So, if you're paralyzed with fear, it's a good sign. It shows you what you have to do.
Oh yeah,
Another drop the hammer.
for sure. That quote that I love from Young, where your fear is, there is your task.
Hmm.
And that brings to mind one of my favorite artists of all time is Marina Abramovic, and I know she's very controversial, but I love her. I've learned so much from her. And I don't know, are you familiar with her? She's a performance artist.
No, I was just gonna ask you about her.
Okay, so yeah, she's called the grandmother of performance art. She did a lot of
Hmm.
endurance art based on like challenging the limits of her body in live performance. And so one of her most famous works was at the MoMA. It was called The Artist is Present. And for 3 months, she sat at a table. So it was a table with two chairs, one on either side. She sat on one side for the entire day from opening to close of the museum. People would line up to sit across from her for any amount of time they wanted and just stare into her eyes.
I
So it
think
was
I
just,
have heard of this. Yeah,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
fantastic.
And she said when she first got the inspiration to do this performance, it immediately made her nauseous, and that's why she knew she had to do it. She was like, because like she'd never pushed her body to that limit of just sitting still and staring into people's eyes, like being that vulnerable, but that like strong in your core at the same time. It was just so fascinating her thought process about it in her autobiography, the way she explained it. But yeah, I definitely feel that the things I'm most scared of are paradoxically the things I most want to do. And
Right?
so, yeah, it's like, why? It's so strange.
Yeah, it's kind of like fear is a compass. I think we have to read this one in the group next week. I'll maybe just bring it to the live call because this chapter is so good, and it's everybody I talk to about coming in here, whether they opt to come in or not, they're scared. And the
Mm,
thing that he's advocating for here is that like then that's the thing that you're supposed to do. Do what scares you the most. Go to the places that I think Pema Chodron has a book that's something called like the places that scare you.
mm.
Let me check the title of that really fast. Pema Chodron. Um, places. Yeah, it's just called the places that scare you. A very
Okay.
Buddhist theme too. Just, these becoming intimate with fear. All right, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. Resistance and love. Resistance is directly proportional to love. If you're feeling massive resistance, the good news is it means there's tremendous love there too. If you
Hmm.
didn't love the project that is terrifying you, you wouldn't feel anything. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
Hmm.
The more resistance you experience, the more important your unmanifested art or project or enterprise is to you, and the more gratification you will feel when you finally do it.
That's excellent. Yeah, I was actually just listening to a teacher say this morning that I think his words were that apathy can be a very dangerous thing to come up in us. I don't know if the word was dangerous that he used, but he was just speaking about that we want to be wary of apathy. He was speaking specifically as devotees, becoming wary of apathy, but it's honestly not a bad thing for probably any human that when you become apathetic to something, that is actually the opposite of love. That's fascinating. It's like the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. It's like, I just don't care. Because actually, if you hate something, that is probably just being fueled by whatever the other end of the polarity, right? And this is a very yeah, very refreshing look at this.
And synchronistically last night I was very deep in prayer and I was kind of like complaining to God like why do I have to feel so much? I'm sick of feeling all of this
Mm,
intensity around my calling, right? Like can it just like what is the point of all this feeling? And then this passage comes along and is like, well, it's because it's important. Like you know, if you didn't
Mm,
feel anything, you would have no purpose. You know what I mean? So
totally. Yeah, I actually haven't had a chance to listen to the voice memo you sent, but I'll get around to that today. Was it at all related to that, what you were just sharing?
Um, it was more like shadow work. I'll quickly condense it. Basically, I'm examining some stuff that's coming up around the fact that I put out a call for artists because I need someone to accompany me with guitar to do my shows like in
Oh,
a
right.
location. And all of the answers I've gotten to my call for artists have been really disappointing and like mediocre. And I'm finding that what's coming up is this weird sense of shame and guilt I feel around rejecting people who I don't resonate with. Like it's like I
Oh,
feel like I'm
right.
a bad person, I'm a bitch because like I have high standards and I want to work with someone who puts in as much effort as I do. And so I was like examining where that shame and guilt comes from. And I realized in my particular case, and you know, I have a very special case around like what the stage means to me because of like trauma. But
Mm.
I realized that I was never allowed to say no to something happening.
Mm.
And now it's like, now that I can say no, it's like, wait, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to just say, actually, I don't feel safe with you. I don't feel comfortable with you. We don't have the same values. Like, you know, so yeah, I'm kind of like exploring and like stretching myself into this new foreign land of like the version of me that gets to say no and like really relish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Yeah, I did see the text that you wrote after the voice memo, and I kind of wondered, for some reason, my mind went to like clients. I didn't know if that's what you were speaking about. But yeah, in terms of collaborators, 100%, because that person is going to have an effect on whatever the creation is.
Hmm.
And it does feel like a theme for like a lot of us doing this kind of work that we are stepping more and more into alignment, and that with alignment also comes discernment.
Hmm.
So yeah, more power to you for like kind of doing the discernment and then also now living that out. Sounds really, keep us posted with how that goes.
Thank you.
I'm
Yeah,
excited
and
for what you're making space for.
thank you. And I'm holding fast to something I've learned in like my ongoing manifestation practice. Like this is where it gets sort of woo-woo, but I have found that when I'm really serious about manifesting a very specific thing, the real practice is not to settle for like half-baked versions of it. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just to continue to believe that what I really want really does exist and I will have it, but I have to maintain faith in its existence. And so my test right now is not to say yes to anybody just because I really want to put a show on or, you know, I need to get back on stage. I don't care who I get on stage with. No, like the right collaborator is out there and I have to stay true to my values and what is calling me.
100%. It's sort of like there's this theme of space, and if there's not space for something to come in because that space is already occupied by something else, then well, the other thing isn't going to come in the way that you want it to. I mean, put very simply, one of my yoga students once expounded upon this in such a way that they were describing their, in their living room, they had a space on the wall above their couch. And instead of just like throwing the first thing up there that they wanted, they actually left that space blank for a very long time until they stepped into, I don't know if it was a gallery, a store, or whatever, but they were like, that's the piece. And
Mm.
otherwise, it's like that space is taken like a parking spot. It's like the space is occupied. And so it just doesn't even register for us to try to fill it with what we really want there because we've just put something else, kind of like I'm hearing, that's like a subpar or halfway meeting your standards there instead. So I love that idea of like making the space and keeping that space preciously available so that you can really call in what is going to, fit there in the way that it belongs.
Yeah, and being comfortable with that empty space. Like that,
Totally,
yeah.
totally. Cool. That's very cool. All right, let's see this one. Resistance in being a star. Grandiose fantasies are a symptom of resistance. Ooh, they're a sign of an amateur. The professional has learned that success, like happiness, comes as a byproduct of work. The professional concentrates on the work and allows rewards to come or not come, whatever they like. This one hits hard because I've always had that like dream and the vision of wanting to be a star. And when
Mhm.
I think that there's like obviously some way to do it in balance because for whatever reason it's like whenever I was going out for a show or I wanted to be in front. I wanted to be the main character. I wanted to like get that part. And I spent so much time dreaming and daydreaming of myself accepting the Tony Award and giving the speech and who would I thank. And I think it's kind of like there's a little bit of a compass probably there for us too. But if I like what he says here, that it's like really happiness and success come as the byproduct of work.
Mhm.
So, not bad to have those visions, have those dreams, but to actually concentrate on the work that's going to get you there and the rewards that are going to come or not come. I've got all these people now asking me about this audition that I went on because I went public and made the video, I posted about it. And I just keep telling them, I'm like, it's out of my hands. It's like,
Right.
if I got the part, that would be a reward. But whether that reward comes or not is almost a whole separate thing because what that audition opportunity did allow me to do was to do the work. And that's, I mean, it's actually clarifying for me now, even as I'm saying it. I keep trying to reframe this like, what if auditions weren't for getting jobs, but just an opportunity to put another rep in, to learn a scene, to get off book, to memorize something, to give yourself exposure. And that's work. And I do feel quite fulfilled just from having done that.
That's a great point. And I recently did coaching earlier in this year with this woman who had like a lot of taglines that she would keep going for. And one of her taglines was faith without works is delusion. And like she drilled that in.
Mm.
Yeah, like of course you can dream big. And some people, the reason we have big dreams is because we are fully capable of realizing them. It's just a matter of like being realistic about whether we're doing the equivalent amount of work.
So faith without work is delusion?
Yeah, faith without works is delusion. And there's like a few different interpretations of that. Like either you could
Sure.
take it to mean like faith without actions is delusion, or it can mean faith without having something to show for it is delusion. So like
Mm.
yeah, so it's like either way, I think it applies.
Love that. Love that. Was that the muscle music coach or a different coach?
No, believe it or not, this was a coach who specializes in helping spiritual people undo their blocks around money.
Oh God, get me to her or him. God damn.
It was a really valuable course. Yeah, I'll give you her info. Or
That's
actually, since
awesome.
people are listening later, her name is Mommy Onami. That's her
Nami and
name.
Nami. Okay, cool. Check that out. All right, you're up if you want to go.
All right. Resistance and isolation. Sometimes we balk at embarking on an enterprise because we're afraid of being alone. We feel comfortable with the tribe around us. It makes us nervous going off into the woods on our own. Here's the trick, we're never alone. As soon as we step outside the campfire glow, our muse lights on our shoulder like a butterfly. The act of courage calls forth infallibly that deeper part of ourselves that supports and sustains us. Have you seen interviews with the young John Lennon or Bob Dylan when the reporter tries to ask about their personal selves? The boys deflect these queries and with withering sarcasm. Why? Because Lennon and Dylan know that the part of them that writes the songs is not them, not the personal self that is of such surpassing fascination to their boneheaded interrogators. Lennon and Dylan also know that the part of themselves that does the writing is too sacred, too precious, too fragile to be redacted into sound bites for the titillation of would-be idolaters who are themselves caught up in their own resistance. So they put them on and blow them off. It is a commonplace among artists and children at play that they're not aware of time or solitude while they're chasing their vision. The hours fly. The sculptress and the tree climbing tyke both look up blinking when mom calls supper time. Next page.
Let's see here. Oh, okay. That's
Oh, that's it. Okay.
so yeah, this is I'm kind of bumming that. I'm enjoying this being here with you, but I'm bumming that more people aren't listening to this live. So please, hopefully, you're listening back because this little bit right here, you guys, is also a very big part of pillar number one. That the people who are writing the songs, this kind of muse within us, it's in our pillar number one mindset that we want to try to cultivate an identity that is separate than our talents, separate than our abilities, separate than our intelligence. And we got into it a little bit yesterday when I was talking about subpersonalities. So there's something very, it might seem counterintuitive. It's like, wait a second, but the thing that I do best, the thing that is one of my most valuable contributions to the world and to the community, wouldn't I want to find my identity in that thing? And I think it's a yes and he captures it so well by saying it's like, yeah, the boneheaded interrogators are trying to find out more about, who these people are, but it's like it's a separate self in a sense. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this too, Allison.
Oh yeah, and I'm not like of the level of like Lennon and Dylan in terms of notoriety, but like any artist, I have definitely accessed that place where I feel like it's not me creating the art that comes through me. It's entirely something else, and it's so trippy because sometimes like when I get compliments on my music, like I have people reach out and be like, "Oh my God, I'm obsessed with this song. I found you on Spotify or whatever." I'm just like, I want to say thank you, but it's not even out of like false humility or anything that I actually feel sort of like a fraud saying thank you because it doesn't feel like my
Mm,
song. It's like, well,
mm-hmm.
honestly, it's God's. I'm just kind of, God let me put my name on it. You know what I mean?
Totally, totally. And it's one of those that kind of, I guess, balance comes into this again because we still want people to feel good about what they're putting out there. Because I guess to play devil's advocate for this is like people falling into that like, oh, it's just like what I'm producing is not good enough. It's not really, but that's not what they're saying here. It's actually that it's we talked about it yesterday, but it's something that comes through us. And there is some unique facet of our personality and our personhood that allows it to come through us in the way that it only can come through us. But this is the reason why actually I believe that everyone has a performer in them. I'm listening a lot to that guy I mentioned to you last week, Dan Coe. He's like, everybody has an entrepreneur in them. We all have a creative spirit in us. But when we become, I guess, over occupied or over identified as that creator, we don't acknowledge the source of the creativity, which if we throw it way back to the beginning of the book, there was that delineation between the way that Pressfield is thinking about this versus the person who wrote the foreword, that the source of that creativity is coming from something greater than our own self. And that tends to be really my belief set around all of this as well.
Hmm.
Okay, and it looks like we got a part two of this, so I'll dive in for this one. Resistance and isolation, part two. Friends sometimes ask, do you get lonely sitting by yourself all day? At first, it seemed odd to hear myself answer no. Then I realized that I was not alone. I was in the book. I was with the characters. I was with myself. Not only do I not feel alone with my characters, they are more vivid and interesting to me than the people in my real life. If you think about it, the case can't be otherwise. In order for a book or any project or enterprise to hold our attention for the length of time it takes to unfold itself, it has to plug into something internal. It has to plug into some internal perplexity or passion that is of paramount importance to us. That problem becomes the theme of our work, even if we can't at the start understand or articulate it. Wow, that's so, like, for me, highlightable because I've gotten so frustrated with that, like, sense of a glimmer of a vision, but it's not quite articulate yet. And so I almost like feel like I just abandon it. Like, what's the point of developing this if I can't understand it yet? But that problem becomes the theme of our work, even if we can't at the start understand or articulate it. As the characters arise, each embodies infallibly an aspect of that dilemma, that perplexity. These characters might not be interesting to anyone else, but they're absolutely fascinating to us. They are us. Meaner, smarter, sexier versions of ourselves. It's fun to be with them because they're wrestling with the same issues that has its hooks into us. They're our soulmates, our lovers, our best friends, even the villains, especially the villains. So we're getting a lot from me of pillar three in here with this. And I do plan to work with you guys on creating altars and fleshing out some of our altars because I think it's such a healthy thing to do. Like who do you become when you're in your darkness? Who do you become when you're in your, your sexy version, your smart version, your nerd version? This is why I think actually drag is absolutely fascinating art form. Is it gives people a medium to step into a personality that is oftentimes sort of greater than themselves, oftentimes a little more savage, a little more catty, perhaps, more expressive, extra, right? And their qualities can go in all different directions. But let me just finish this out and we can talk a little more about it. Even in a book like this, which has no characters, I don't feel alone because I'm imagining the reader, whom I conjure as an aspiring artist, much like my own younger, less grizzled self, to whom I hope to impart with little starch and inspiration and prime, a little with some hard knocks of wisdom and a few tricks of the trade. So I always love to think of those people when they're creating this, when they're when he was writing this came up a lot when I did an online teacher training. And my teacher, he had to record all these videos speaking just directly to a camera. And now he's had hundreds of people go through this teacher training. It's very successful. But there can be this feeling that like I'm incredibly alone. I feel this sometimes when I'm creating content for, my coaching clients too. It's like, damn, like there's no one on the other side of that camera, and yet obviously we don't really even know. Who knows what he was expecting when he wrote this book, The War of Art, that there'd be people having little book clubs and talking about it and audiobooks, but it turned into a huge thing. And so it just brings us back to that point that like really that idea of us being alone in any moment actually is arguably an illusion.
Wow. I'm having such big thoughts about this. I'm like not even sure if I should share them.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Okay.
You can let them simmer if you want. It's that kind of like maybe they're not quite quite articulate yet.
I think my dilemma is like more like, is this beneficial to anyone other than me? But I guess it's not mine to judge or decide that. Let me just put it out there.
Yeah, please, please.
I have been having dreams of a particular man for 2 years, someone I do not know in
Mm,
real life. And he always has the same face, same mannerisms. He has a whole personality that I swear I did not create. Like it's like sometimes I've read theories of like parallel universes that we access in dreams. And so it's gotten to the point where the dreams are so vivid and so normal that I do wonder if it's possible that there are parallel universes. But point is, I'm so enamored with this dream character. I've thought about writing down what it is we talk about in my dreams because these conversations
mm,
reveal so much to me. And I'm like, oh, I bet other people would really benefit from this. And this passage here, um, is like reminding me that like, oh yeah, that could just very well be an unrealized aspect of yourself that is
mm-hmm.
come forward and like be embodied, which is so wild because like when you have dreams, it's so easy to think of the dream as like, oh, there are these weird made up characters I encountered who don't exist, but like actually it's all you. And to like really own that and reintegrate it is so
Mm,
like it's blowing my mind right now. It's like, what if I were to take on the characteristics of this dream person, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, what would that be like? How, would that be fruitful for me? Yeah, that I'm just kind of tripping out on that right now.
Have you ever done the practice of writing down your dreams in the morning?
Oh, every day. Yeah,
Oh,
I've
okay,
been,
gotcha.
yeah, I have a lucid dreaming app actually, so
Oh,
it's up
cool.
on the bell all throughout the day so that I can ask myself, am I dreaming or not? It's made my life very trippy.
Yeah, I've someone I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but I do remember hearing that prompt from someone before about asking yourself, getting in the practice of asking yourself in the dream, am I dreaming? Yes, and then asking yourself throughout the day, am I dreaming? And also answering yes. It's
Yes, that's my
yeah. Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, thank you for actually putting that out there. I think it's interesting, and I'm curious to hear if anyone who's listening back to this has some resonance. So
that'd
let
be
me
cool.
just do a quick check here. I think we're pretty close. So let's power through if you have the time,
Oh yeah.
and then we'll wrap up at the end of this section.
All right. Resistance and healing. Have you ever spent time in Santa Fe? There's a subculture of healing there. The idea is that there's something therapeutic in the atmosphere, a safe place to go and get yourself together. There are other places, Santa Barbara and Ojai, California come to mind, usually populated by upper middle class people with more time and money than they know what to do with, in which the culture of healing also obtains. The concept in all these environments seems to be that one needs to complete his healing before he is ready to do his work. This way of thinking, are you ahead of me, is a form of resistance. What are we trying to heal anyway? The athlete knows the day will never come when he wakes up pain free. He has to play hurt. Remember, the part of us that we imagine needs healing is not the part we create from. That part is far deeper and stronger. The part we create from can't be touched by anything our parents did or society did. That part is unsullied, uncorrupted, soundproof, waterproof, and bulletproof. In fact, the more troubles we've got, the better and richer that part becomes. The part that needs healing is our personal life. Personal life has nothing to do with work. Besides, what better way of healing than to find our center of self sovereignty? Isn't that the whole point of healing?
Wow, here he is again with the hammer. He's
Hmm.
especially for those people who are in healing spaces, which I tend to find myself in a lot, and I love that. I've spent my whole, a lot of my career actually, developing skills and modalities to support people in their healing. And I've had to come face to face with this as an entrepreneur, is that we don't have to wait to do the work. We don't have to wait for our healing to be done. I don't really think our healing is actually ever done. I believe we heal into birth, we heal through life, and then we heal into death. And depending on what your framework is, you might just go do it all again. And what the scope of that is until, yeah, that's like a different conversation really, but like it's and it's tough because it's like the things that we are healing, they arguably are painful, and they are keeping us they are creating a heaviness in us, and they are creating extra obstacles for us. And I mean, this part to me was just like very, very profound, this idea that the part of us that we imagine needs healing is not the part that we create from. That part is unsullied, it's uncorrupted, it's soundproof, it's waterproof, it's bulletproof. He's actually gone Bhagavad Gita on us. If you take a look at this, one of my favorite spiritual texts. Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita goes into great detail about this idea that the soul, that is essentially our true nature, it's indestructible. It's beyond comprehension. It's never born. It never dies. They go on in a moment to talk about how the soul cannot be cut, it cannot get wet, it cannot be destroyed. And so there's just some similarity. It doesn't look like I'm going to find those exact passages in the Gita, but maybe I'll bring them back sometime. Any thoughts from you on this one, Allison?
Um, I had one. Oh, there goes my lucid dreaming notification right
Are
now,
you
and
dreaming?
I
Life
um
is but a dream.
honestly, I really live like that actually. Like I've come to see life that way. And yeah, I what came to mind honestly, and I'm not sure if it's useful, if this like connection is useful, but in like the manifestation world, there that resistance shows up a lot too. Like, oh, you can't have the thing you're manifesting until you heal whatever's blocking you, or like,
Mm.
of your childhood trauma. It's like, I don't believe that because I've manifested plenty of stuff and I'm not a perfect person. I'm not healed of everything. Like I think when you start telling yourself that story, it's almost like that's the part of you that low key is afraid to get what you want. And so you're deciding that
Ooh.
you're, yeah,
Yeah, love that. Love that. Curious to hear from others in the group. Put comments below. Oh, shoot, we actually got a whole
there's
bunch more.
more.
So, yeah, feel free to continue.
Okay. I washed up in New York a couple of decades ago, making 20 bucks a night, driving a cab, and running away full time from doing my work. One night, alone in my $110 a month sublet, wow, imagine, I hit
Damn.
I hit bottom in terms of having diverted myself into so many phony channels so many times that I couldn't rationalize it for one more evening. I dragged out my ancient Smith Corona, dreading the experience as pointless, fruitless, meaningless, not to say the most painful exercise I could think of. For 2 hours, I made myself sit there, torturing out some trash that I chucked immediately into the shit can. That was enough. I put the machine away. I went back to the kitchen. In the sink sat 10 days of dishes. For some
Oh,
reason, I had enough excess energy that I decided to wash them. The warm water felt pretty good. The soap and sponge were doing their thing. A pile of clean plates began rising in the drying rack. To my amazement, I realized I was whistling.
mm.
That I had turned a corner. I was okay. I would be okay from here on. Do you understand? I hadn't written anything good. It might be years before I would, if I ever did at all. That didn't matter. What counted was that I had, after years of running from it, actually sat down and done my work. Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against true healing. We all need it. But it has nothing to do with doing our work, and it can be a colossal exercise in resistance. Resistance loves healing. Resistance knows that the more psychic energy we expend dredging and redredging the tired, boring injustices of our personal lives, the less juice we have to do our work.
Woo! Yes, he is. This is actually not the first time I've heard the whistling thing. I was talking to, he was an accordion player, quite a renowned accordion player actually, who would come play at the Met and different places, Carnegie Hall. And he lived on Staten Island. It's quite a commute to come from Staten Island. You take the ferry and everything. But he was recounting a story to us, and someone was asking if he liked living on Staten Island. And he realized that one day he was walking from his apartment to the ferry, and he found himself whistling. And he's like, I guess I like it here because, you found yourself, and it's a very sweet, sweet thing. And he's highlighting something so valuable again in this chapter that like we don't have to produce quote unquote good work. If anyone's ever heard of that book, Natasha, or what's her name? Is it Natalie? Natasha Goldberg? Writing Down the Bones. Are you familiar with that book, Allison?
Yeah.
It's a good one, really, really good one. And it's just, again, same thing, just like about putting out content, putting out, not even publishing content necessarily, but just getting the reps in, putting the pen to paper and writing and not judging it. And that will free something else up in us. It will free up possibly in us the capacity even to whistle.
Hmm.
All right, let me take this one, and then we're just a few away from reaching book 2. Resistance and support. Have you ever been to a workshop? These boondoggles are colleges of resistance. They ought to give out PhDs in resistance. What better way to avoid doing work than to go to a workshop? But what I hate even worse is the word support. Seeking support from friends and family is like having people gathered around you at your deathbed. It's nice, but when the ship sails, all they can do is stand on the dock and wave goodbye. Any support we get from persons of flesh and blood is like monopoly money. It's not legal tender in that sphere where we have to do our work. In fact, the more energy we spend stoking up on support from colleagues and loved ones, the weaker we become and the less capable of handling our business. My friend Carol had the following dream at a time when her life felt like it was careening out of control. She was a passenger on a bus. Bruce Springsteen was driving. Suddenly, Springsteen pulled over, handed Carol the keys, and bolted. In the dream, Carol was panicking. How could she drive this huge rolling greyhound? By now, all the passengers were staring. Clearly, no one else was going to step forward and take charge. Carol took the wheel. To her amazement, she found she could handle it. Later, analyzing the dream, she figured Bruce Springsteen was the boss of her psyche. But the bus was the vehicle of her life. The boss was telling Carol it was time to take the wheel. More than that, the dream, by actually setting her down in the driver's seat and letting her feel that she could control the vehicle on the road, was providing her with a simulator run to prime her with the confidence that she could actually take command in her life. A dream like that is real support. It's a check you can cash when you sit down alone to do your work. And when your deeper self, P.S., when your deeper self delivers a dream like that, don't talk about it. Don't dilute its power. The dream is for you. It's between you and your muse. Shut up and use it. Hilarious. The only exception is you may share it with another comrade in arms if sharing it will help or encourage that comrade in his or her own endeavors. Very sweet, and it's kind of like, I'm thinking of a carbonated, bottle of soda or sparkling water, since I don't advocate much for soda. But you will release the pressure. There'll be like a little bit of a fizz that releases from that when you open up the cap. And I think that there's something about that. I definitely am guilty of this a lot. I like to talk, I like to socialize, and sometimes there's actually fascinating studies that are being talked about this a little bit more recently in the dopamine field, is that by telling other people your ideas, so this is less about a dream and more about your ideas and your plans and your goals, by speaking your goals out loud and sharing them with other people, you will actually get the dopamine hit from just doing that that will satisfy you in such a way that you won't feel so inspired to go and fulfill the goal in the long run or follow through on that plan, because your body, your physiology is like, well, we already got what this goal wanted us to get in the long run, dopamine. So why bother going through with it now? And so it's kind of like how many countless plans, goals are actually ruined because of how much they get talked about. The energy gets diffused instead of appropriately channeled.
That's blowing my mind.
Isn't that
But
crazy? Had you heard about those studies with the dopamine?
no, I'm glad you put it in those terms, because the way I've heard about, move in silence, don't tell people your goals, I've always heard it put in very paranoid terms, like, oh, people will put the evil eye on your plans, like, don't let,
Mm,
and it's more of like this like weird psychic warfare kind of, and like, and it never convinced me. It never convinced me to like shut up about my goals. But that makes way more sense. That almost like we can trick ourselves into thinking we've accomplished the thing just by talking about it. And
I
so,
know,
but
and it's
the power is on, it's in our hands to like decide whether we actually do it or not.
totally, totally. It's kind of like contradictory to some of the other stuff I've heard. I'm a big fan of James Clear's work in Atomic Habits, and he talks a lot about one of his laws for behavior change is to make it public. The thing that you say you're going to change, make it public so other people can hold you accountable. So once again, balance. I'm sure that there is, it's not always all one way, but I do really feel that there's something to both what he's saying here and what some of those studies are relaying. All right, let's hear this one.
Resistance and rationalization. Rationalization is resistance's right-hand man. Its job is to keep us from feeling the shame we would feel if we truly faced what cowards we are for not doing our work. Michael, don't knock rationalization. Where would we be without it? I don't know anyone who can get through the day without 2 or 3 juicy rationalizations. They're more important than sex. Sam, oh, come on, nothing's more important than sex. Michael, oh yeah? Have you ever gone a week without a rationalization?
Wow.
Oh, so that's taken from Jeff Goldblum and Tom Berenger in Lawrence Kasdan's The Big Chill. But rationalization has its own sidekick. It's that part of our psyche that actually believes what rationalization tells us. It's one thing to lie to ourselves, it's another thing to believe it.
So good, so good. There's Bhagavad Gita here again. If you're familiar with that, you've got the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And Arjuna is just like experiencing this existential crisis, massive anxiety attack on the brink of an epic battle that he has to fight a lot of his friends and family in. And he is rationalizing the fuck out of the situation. And actually, all of chapter one, Bhagavad Gita, is him laying out the case for why he should just not fight. He should actually just lay down arms and go meditate somewhere in a cave because why would we want to kill these people? Blah, blah, blah. He lays out every single amazing reason, and it's all rationale. It's not actually connected to deeper purpose and the deeper, more vital action that he is being called to based on his dharma. There's another one of my very favorite Jordan Peterson quotes from his book called The 12 Rules for Life. It has to do with our rational faculty having a very great temptation to try to elevate itself to the absolute. So this is not to, 100%, as they say here, don't knock rationalization. Rationalization, it does have a seat at the table. It does have maybe it's also another passenger in the car, but when we let it take the driver's seat, it will probably be able to talk us out of, to rationalize us out of doing what we most deeply need and want to do. Because it's kind of the job of what rationalization does for us.
Yeah, and to add another spiritual angle to this, for the astrology people who I know are listening, in Vedic astrologies, there's the concept of Rahu and Ketu. Are you familiar at all?
No.
So in the myths, because astrology, Vedic astrology is very myth based, since it's Vedic culture, like everything is told through myths. So, there was this dragon who wanted to be like a god, who wanted to be immortal. So he waited around at this like meeting of the gods where they were going to drink the soma of immortality, and he tried to
Mm.
like sneak in and drink the soma, without having earned it through his own efforts. So the gods caught,
Ooh.
cut off his head. And so then they threw the head and the body to opposite ends of the universe. So the head was Rahu, who could still eat, like who could still consume, but had no stomach with which to digest whatever he'd consume. And K2 is the body who has the power to digest, but has no head to direct it. So it just lays inert.
Oh man.
And so that, is like a perfect explanation of like what happens when your consciousness is over here and your subconscious is over there and they're not connecting with each other. So the way I see it, like Rahu is associated with like being too much in your head. Like you can come up with all these theories and ideas, but if you're not in your body about it, actually digesting those ideas
Mm.
experience, then it's worthless. And so you never actually get nourished by that soma of immortality.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, the head kind of trying to override the body, the heart, the gut,
Mhm.
and we have ample opportunity to look at that with a lot of the work that we're doing in here. Thank you for bringing that in. That's
Oh
super
yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got two more. Here we go. Resistance and rationalization, part two. Resistance is fear, but resistance is too cunning to show itself naked in this form. Why? Because if resistance lets us see clearly that our own fear is preventing us from doing our work, we may feel shame at this. A shame, and shame may drive us to act in the face of fear. Resistance doesn't want us to do this, so it brings in rationalization. Rationalization is resistance's spin doctor. It's resistance's way of saying, it's resistance's way of hiding the big stick behind its back. Instead of showing us our fear, which might shame us and impel us to do our work, resistance presents us with a series of plausible, rational justifications for why we shouldn't do our work. What's particularly insidious about the rationalizations that resistance presents to us is that a lot of them are true. They're legitimate. Our wife may really be in her 8th month of pregnancy. She may in truth need us at home. Our department may really be instituting a changeover that will eat up hours of our time. Indeed, it may make sense to put off finishing our dissertation at least till after the baby's born. What resistance leaves out, of course, is that all this means diddly. Tolstoy had 13 kids and wrote War and Peace. Lance Armstrong had cancer and won the Tour de France 3 years and counting. Oh, okay. And last one, you go ahead and take it away.
Resistance can be beaten. If resistance couldn't be beaten, there would be no Fifth Symphony, no Romeo and Juliet, no Golden Gate Bridge. Defeating resistance is like giving birth. It seems absolutely impossible until you remember that women have been pulling it off successfully with support and without for 50 million years.
Woo!
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, and that is book one. So we will dive in next week with book two. Thank you for coming to mine and Allison's podcast. That was fun. It was fun, just yeah, throwing some ideas back and forth and hearing your reflections and your responses from this. And I hope you guys listened to this, and I hope you got something out of it. We went a little longer than I like these calls to usually go, but I think it was worth it just to kind of plow through and get through, finish book one, and he has given us a great setup for where we are going next. And that next book is called Turning Pro. So it's like, what do we do with all this? Now we know what we got. What do we do with what you got? One of my teachers loves to say this. It's not what you got, it's what you do with what you got. So cool, Allison. Thank you so much. And I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right, see ya.